Wiley needs a win to get the district title in 9-6A. To make the postseason without a win, they have Garland and Forest would have to lose in order for those guys to make it, because Wiley lost to both teams. But this is the time of the year, man, when you get down to the nitty gritty with these guys, and who's getting in and who's getting out. And in the battle of Wiley, we'll know. We'll know by Friday to see who's got it, man. But listen, Forney taking on Rockwall. What's up, everybody? This is Mark Henry here with the Platform DFW podcast, and it's getting down to the nitty gritty. It's almost playoff time. We're in the final week of the regular season, and we're going to talk about a couple of big games. Also talk about some playoff scenarios and possible matchups heading into the final week of the regular season, man. We appreciate everybody that's been tapping in. Shout out to all the platform shows around the country. But, it doesn't get any bigger than the state of Texas when it comes to playoff football. The wind has changed. The atmosphere has changed. The stadiums get more packed. This is what it's all about in the state of Texas. So we're going to talk about a couple of big games this week. Starting out up north in Frisco, Reedy and Lone Star get with it. They get down Thursday. And this is one of those big games. Now, Lone Star and Reedy will battle it out for the first place title, and definitely the district title in 5A D1. Right now, Lone Star is one of those teams that's kind of been, steadily climbing the ranks. They're a top-ranked team in the state of Texas. Of course, they got one of the top young players in the state in the 2028 class in quarterback Trey Wright. Of course, they got Davion Gross, Carice Hoyt, and those guys on the outside. We're talking about a super talented team. But sophomore quarterback Trey Wright, he's passed for over 2,000 yards and 26 touchdowns, 56 yards and 8 touchdowns on the ground. Of course, we talked about Hoyt, who's a Baylor commit, a 4-star Baylor commit. Has got 548 yards on the ground and 12 touchdowns. And then you got Florida commit Davion Gross, 25 catches for 653 yards. And 9 tutties. Lincoln Horn has been one of those guys, if you hadn't paid attention to things around the DFW, he's a junior quarterback that I think is really starting to rise up the ranks in the 2027 class statewide, not just in DFW. I've been keeping my eye on this guy. He's helping Reedy average over 399 yards of offense a game, over 1,900 yards passing and 27 tutties on the season. He's also rushed for 614 yards and 6 touchdowns. One of his main targets is Aaron Neerman, 53 catches for 792 yards and 8 touchdowns. This is for all the marbles. Now, I think that, right now everybody's kind of, if you talk to people around the Metroplex, you look at Lone Star as one of those teams that can threaten to make a playoff run and possibly make it to state. Now, they still have to deal with, of course, the Alito Bearcats in 5A D1 as well. But they're on a collision course. Now, you got Highland Park as well, and we'll talk about them as well. But I think this is one of those games that you got to keep your eye on this week. That's why we're talking about another big game. You got Rockwall Heath taking on the Forney Jackrabbits. Now, Rockwall Heath is coming off a big win last week over their arch rival Rockwall to kind of send those guys home. Rockwall's out of the playoff mix now. But this is for seeding now. And Forney's got one of the best running backs in the country, Javion Osborne, a Notre Dame commit. This will also be a Thursday contest, 10-6A. The final playoff spot is on the line. Now, Forney can clinch a playoff berth, or they ended up clinching a playoff berth with a 56-46 win last week. But this is one of those matchups that's going to get you ready for the playoffs. Heath has got a phenomenal quarterback as well as a running back in Carter Zom. He's been playing at a phenomenal level. He's a 2027 running back. Of course, we talked about Javion Osborne, who's got over 1,500 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns. And Carter Zom's over 1,000 yards for Heath and 11 touchdowns. I expect big offensiveness. And don't sleep on the quarterback for Forney and Nelson Peterson. He's coming off a very successful season. But I think that these guys know that everything's on the line. This is one of those games that you got to buckle your chin strap up. Now, Forney, Heath, and North Forney all have identical records in 10-6A. So this is for all the marbles. Now, Heath beat North Forney a few weeks ago, 56-55. And then North Forney, the same score last week against Longview, they come back and win the game 56-55. So This is another big game on the DFW that you have to keep an eye on. Now, we're going to head a little bit further west for this next one. This is two big rivals in the same area. You got Euless Trinity and LD Bell. This is for all the marbles. LD Bell needs this game to get into the playoffs. They haven't beat Trinity in years. Last year, Trinity beat them 63-13. The Trojans, if you know anything about Trinity football, they're always very stout in the offensive line. Mac Lineweaver's been the guy in the center for these guys this year, as well as JT Harris in the backfield. You know what you're getting with the Trinity Trojans. Pound the rock football, physical, in-your-face football. LD Bell hasn't won this matchup in a long time. This is a big rivalry game. And LD Bell needs this game to get into the playoffs. They haven't beaten them in a while. Can they get it done? I expect Pennington Field to be packed. That's going to be a very, very good game. Trinity, LD Bell, Thursday game. Definitely a big game. Now, 11-6A, of course, we all know that in DFW as the District of Doom. But the big game, the marquee game, is Cedar Hill takes on Duncanville. But Cedar Hill has to go to Duncanville. Tough place to play. They call it locking the gates for a reason. And you do not go into Duncanville not ready to play. Now, both teams have clinched the playoffs, so this is not necessarily for who gets in. But Duncanville right now is in a three-way tie with Waxahachie and DeSoto for the lead. So Duncanville can flat out win this thing. Now, Cedar Hill last week took care of business against Mesquite Horn, 42-31, and they're back in the playoffs after missing last year. So this is a big game. I kind of feel bad for all the other teams around the state because when you go toe-to-toe in 11-6A each year, this is one of those things where these guys come out ready to play in the bi-district round, and it's always a tough matchup for the other teams around the state because they've been so battle-tested. But this is a big one we'll keep an eye on, as well as the Duncanville Panthers welcome in the Cedar Hill Longhorns. This is a rivalry that goes back decades, with these two teams. They're close proximity, about 10 minutes from each other. So all of these guys know each other, grown up around each other, been playing against each other for years. Big game here. But I like the play of Duncanville quarterback Maximus Denson. He's starting to mature. I really like Duncanville going into the playoffs. Of course, they got two of the best edge rushers in the country in Landon Barnes and KJ Ford. You got Edwards on the back end as well. These guys are very, very good on the defensive side of the football. Victor Lincoln, one of the best corners in the state. This should be a good game. Of course, Cedar Hill's going to have to work for it. Muhammad, the quarterback for Cedar Hill, has been playing at a high level this year as well. But I think that, Duncanville is Duncanville. And they haven't lost. I can't remember. The last time that I can remember or recall Duncanville losing at home was to Mater Dei out of California. I was at that game. It was like 40-something to 3 or 45-3, I believe. And that was a few years ago. And that's the last time I can recall that they lost a home game. So they don't lose at home very often. And that's what you get out of that program. South Grand Prairie and Arlington Bowie play for all the marbles. This is a big, big game as well. I had a chance to see Bowie play last week against Lamar, and they have a really, really good team. Now, for what you're going to be looking forward to, I think that these guys know what's going on here. I think that, SGP is playing for all the marbles. They want to go to the playoffs undefeated. Bowie's been playing at a high level. They had a pretty good game against Lamar last week. I think that, we're set up for a big run here from South Grand Prairie. I think South Grand Prairie has the wherewithal to make it through, the first or second round. San Diego State commit Josiah Lucas has been on fire. He's right around 1,000 yards, 20 touchdowns on the season. SGP has been just balling on offense. They're averaging almost 400 yards a game. But Bowie's won 6 straight. And I know Coach Sam and those guys over there have these guys ready to play. This is a big, big game. It's going to be over in Arlington on Thursday, UT Arlington. Definitely might have to pull up on this one for sure. Definitely a big game that we definitely might have to check out. Berkner and Pierce, 2 Richardson schools that have been playoff teams and been playing well this year. This is a big game. Of course, J.J. Pierce, the Mustangs and the Birkenhead Rams, they're right in the same proximity. So, again, this is another big brother, little cousin, you go across the street to play with your homeboys and stuff like that. This is that kind of game. Lake Highlands, Richardson, and Jesuit have already clinched playoff spots. So this is the winner-take-all game between these guys. Again, man, we told you some big games around the city this particular weekend, the final weekend of the season. And it's one of those things where you definitely got to tap in with this one. Birkin is trying to get back to the playoffs after missing last year, and Pierce has been a perennial, playoff team for real. You know what I'm saying? Hey, big game that you definitely want to check out. Now, the Battle of Wiley, this is one of the most interesting on the docket for this weekend. Wiley East to Wiley. Again, two teams right in the same proximity, guys in the same area that know each other. Wiley needs a win to get the district title in 9-6A. And, Wiley East has been that team. They've been those guys all year. So, Wiley, to make the postseason without a win, they have Garland and Forest would have to lose in order for those guys to make it, because Wiley lost to both teams. But this is the time of the year, man, when you get down to the nitty gritty with these guys, and who's getting in and who's getting out. And in the Battle of Wiley, we'll know. We'll know by Friday to see who's got it, man. But listen, Forney taking on Rockwall. Now, we talked about Rockwall earlier. Rockwall is going to miss the playoffs. They lost to Rockwall Heath, but North Forney came back against a playoff team in Longview, the Longview Lobos, a historic program, a state title program, coached by Coach John King. But Coach Marcus Shavers has been one of the best coaches in the Metroplex the last few years. He's come in North Forney, and these guys have been to the playoffs. They'll make it to the playoffs this year, so they'll be 2 years in a row. I like what North Forney's doing over there. And they have one of the best players in the country in Legend Bay at quarterback. He's a phenomenal talent. But listen, I think that they have one of the best running backs that people are not talking about in Corday Woodard. He had a phenomenal game against Longview last week. Speed, power, breakaway ability. He went yard on Longview and left everybody in the dust. This guy's a factor back. He's going to be a factor for North Forney this year. Legend Bay had a phenomenal game against Longview last week, 243 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's rushed for over 1,300 yards and 23 touchdowns this year. Also passed for over 1,014 scores. Straight up dual threat. Best player on that team, and one of the best players in the state and definitely in the country that you got to talk about. This is a guy you have to pull up on and see in person. He's that good. He's like that. He's committed to Tennessee for a reason. One more game we're going to talk about, Midlothian and Highland Park. We mentioned the Highland Park Scots earlier, and Midlothian has been a perennial playoff team. Now, Highland Park was in the state championship game last year, led by junior quarterback Buck Randall. Now, Buck Randall's one of those guys in the state of Texas that's on the rise. He was in the state championship as a sophomore last year. They fell short, but he's back, and he's been playing great. Cannon Bozeman, one of his favorite targets over there, just picked up a TCU offer today. So this is a team that can go all the way. But Buck Randall's been playing at a high level. He's passed for 2,915 yards and 34 touchdowns on the season. As a junior, Buck Randall's that guy. And I really like what Buck does with the football. He's an athletic guy that can run as well, but he doesn't make many mistakes. He's got a quick release, and he's a guy that's going to take, Highland Park. I think they have a chance to go back to state again. But now we mentioned 5AD1, we mentioned Alito, we mentioned Lone Star in that mix as well. But I think Highland Park definitely has a chance to make another run to state. But Midlothian's in the way. A very, very good team. This is a 7-5A D1 matchup. Midlothian's already in the playoffs. But, I think that Highland Park, is one of those teams that can get on a run and make some things happen. Last game we'll talk about today, Seguin out of the Arlington area taking on Mansfield Summit. Now, the Summit Jaguars are a team that's been to the playoffs. They usually get hot around this time of the year. And Seguin was a playoff team last year, but they got knocked out in the first round last year. This is a big matchup over in Mansfield, another Thursday game. They're playing for that fourth and final spot. You win and you in. You win and you taste that playoff atmosphere. This is a big game. I think that, Seguin is one of those teams that can get hot. And this either one of these teams is a team you don't want to see in the first round. But Seguin's averaging over 344 yards of offense, and then Summit's averaging over 400 yards of offense. The key for Summit is going to be Ian Gebhardt. He's one of the best players in the DFW. If you don't know, look him up. All you got to do is look. This guy is taking over at quarterback for Summit. They had an injury, but he's really probably one of the best all-around athletes in that particular area, and definitely one of the best senior athletes in the DFW. College coaches, you got to get on this guy. We're going to have to get my guy Ian on the platform. We had a chance to see a lot of Gebhardt playing for True Buzz the last couple of years, and he's been phenomenal. But now he's at the quarterback position. He's doing a great job. I love what he's doing. I've had a chance to see some of his tape. But these guys definitely have a shot at it. I think Summit, has, a chance to really do some big things if they can get in, and so does Seguin. So, this is one of those games that you definitely have to tap in with. Carter versus Lincoln. I think this is probably a premier game maybe nobody's talking about. This will be 7 o'clock or 7:15 Thursday as well. The Carter Cowboys have kind of bounced back. They beat their rival a couple of weeks ago in Kimball. Lincoln's been playing well as well. These are two teams that probably don't get talked about enough, but I think both of these teams have a chance to get out of the first round of the playoffs this year if they can get in and make some noise. I think that, both teams are in the playoffs. Carter Cowboys, they want to continue this tradition, you know what I'm saying, and Lincoln as well. You can go all the way back to the days that Coach Samples was at Lincoln, and, they were a team that was talked about around DFW for sure. But I think this will be a big game. Now, this is for the district's number 1 seed, so whoever loses this game will fall back into that second or third spot in that particular district. But I think that, when we talk about, teams coming out of that Dallas area, these are two teams that could definitely give people trouble when it comes to getting in the playoffs. But that's what we're here for, man. The platform DFW, we want to spotlight and highlight and expose the unexposed. But before we get out of here, let's talk about the district races. 3-6A, we know what's going on there. North Crowley, the Panthers should be the number 1 seed there. Lake Ridge is in, and Mansfield is in that particular district. So, the big games in that district this week, of course, the North Crowley matchups, the Battle of Crowley. You got Coach Lynn and Coach Gates going head-to-head. Shout out to my guy, Antavius Ellis from Crowley. He just committed to Nebraska this week, one of the best receivers in the country in the 2027 class. But this should be a great matchup. North Crowley's got a great secondary. I look for Antavius Ellis to have a big game going against this crosstown rival. But Boswell's a team that's trying to get in the mix as well in that district. They clinched the final spot in the number 2 seed in the 6A D2 playoffs, but they got to beat Lake Ridge. Crowley can get in the final spot, but they have to take care of business against North Crowley, and Boswell has to lose. But, in that particular district, why I brought that up is because Boswell's been playing pretty good this year. They had a big win earlier in the season, and they've been playing well as well. Now, we talked about 4-6A, which includes Trinity, South Lake Carroll, which is number 1 team in the state, and Byron Nelson. Now, LD Bell's only way in is they have to beat Trinity. We talked about this. And Keller Central has to lose. So that's the 4-6A scenario. Carroll's already in, Byron Nelson's already in, and Trinity's already in. Can LD Bell pull it off? This is the year the Raiders, they do this every year. They do this every year, and they come back and they get to Trinity, and they hadn't been able to, get the win over the Trojans, their arch rival. So that's the 4-6A look. Definitely think that these guys have a shot to get in there. 5-6A, shout out to the Guy Wildcats. They're the number 1 seed going into Division 2. You got Capel and you got Louisville. Now, Flower Mound Marcus can get in, and Hebron can get in for that 4th spot. But Hebron has to win over Flower Mound, or Marcus has to lose to Capel. Hebron is a very dangerous team. So is Marcus. Of course, they got Colton Nussmeier, one of the best quarterbacks in the 2027 class in the state of Texas, for sure. That's a big game. Mount Marcus taking on Capel is a big game. Hebron taking on Flower Mound is a big game. Definitely want to talk about that. Now, 6-6A, this will be the last one we talk about before we get out, because we know Allen and Prosper in. That was a big game a couple of weeks ago. Allen took the victory by 1. Now, Plano West and Rock Hill are battling for that final spot. 2 games will decide that final spot. Plano West wins and a Rock Hill loss. That's the scenario you got to do. You got to get it in. This is why they play these games in the final week of the season. Plano West is the number 2 seed and they get in, and Rock Hill's eliminated. But Rock Hill has an opportunity to get in. But if Plano West loses and Rock Hill wins, they're in, and Plano West is eliminated. And this is why you got to play these games. This is what makes those district games fun, man. And definitely the DFW, we're seeing it every week. You know what I mean? So, it's one of those things where these teams you got to do it right now. And these coaches are getting these guys ready to go. The playoffs start this week for teams on the fringe trying to get in. And that's what we're talking about here on the Platform DFW podcast. I'm your host, Mark Henry. Definitely check out the platform.dr.com, man. We got some articles dropping, as well as the Platform Podcast Network. Tap in, man. Shout out to DR Sports as well. Go on the DR Sports webpage and check out the schedule. It's out. We're going to be hitting the road in January, bringing you the best 7-on-7 tournaments. Of course, the platform will be in the building, looking for the next talent. Who's up and coming? Who can we expose? Can we expose the unexposed? Again, that's all we got for you. Next week, when we come at you, we're going to be talking about playoff matchups in the DFW areas going down. Shout out to my guys down in the H, my guy, Coach Nick, Stats Gradney, man. Check out the Platform Podcast Network on the DR Sports YouTube channel. I am your host, Mark Henry. We'll get at you next week.